We have to go to the other team that everyone talks about. Paolo Banchero mentioned them, of the three, including the Sixers, the New York Knicks, and where they are. And a lot of people feel certain ways about them. They feel differently. Knicks fans are very, very excited, and they should be, because of what they did last season, getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, adding Kale, bringing back OG Anunoby, a healthy Julius Randle coming back. They're very curious to see what they can do with him now. Their depth is really good. One problem for me, Kyle, is Isaiah Hartenstein is now gone. He was a big piece, whether he was coming off the bench behind Mitchell Robinson early in the season or when he eventually took over and became a big, huge part of what they did, which is why he got the big contract from OKC. That's a big loss for them. That said, they will be in the mix of the teams we talk about in that top three.
Yeah, so look, their downside case is, one, everything's going to run through Jalen Brunson, and he's a short guard, and sometimes you will just run into a wall with that. Yep. I mean, early in the Sixers series, they did a very good job holding him down early in that series, and if they had been able to keep him not at that level, right, because he was mightily struggling, but if you keep him at like a medium Jalen Brunson performance, I think they're vulnerable. I don't think they have like I love McHale, but I think if he has to be the guy for a lot of that series, I would be skeptical that they can beat a team like the Sixers, a team like the Celtics at that level. Yeah. Like, I think they can certainly beat anybody they're likely to match up with in round one, but I think the deeper you get, the more I'd be concerned about the secondary creation.
Well, and that's why throwing away those first two games when he was struggling were so frustrating. Like, if you had a team who took advantage of those, New York might not advance in that series.
I would say the other one, though, that is more meaningful for me, as you brought up, the Hartenstein loss is big because he is a multi-skilled big, right? I think Mitchell Robinson is good. I think in the Sixers matchup, he has shown he's so big that he can give Joel some problems in isolation and defend him one-on-one. That's a big thing. Where do you go beyond that, right? Like Precious Achiuwa, I've never really been a believer in. If he had been a minimum type guy here, I would have, thrown a parade, obviously. But as a big rotation guy, not a big fan of. Some of their team concept relies on, I shouldn't say some, a lot of their team concept relies on a clean bill of health for the wings. And while your cousin is one of the biggest Iron Men in the league, OG Anunoby gets hurt every single year in some capacity. It misses time, whether that's in the regular season and the playoffs. And so if they can't play that multiple big wing lineup in the playoffs to make up for it, whether you're playing truly small and saying, hey, OG's a 5 essentially, and then we run out everybody else, or you have Precious at the 5 and you have Kale and you have OG. If OG's hurt and you can't do that, I think it gets a lot dicier for them in a real hurry. You're playing guys like DiVincenzo is okay defensively, right? But he's somebody that can be exploited. Certainly Brunson can. And if you run out of these options where you don't have a big back there to rebound and protect the rim, and you're not as stout as you want to be defensively on an individual matchup level, I think that they could get in some trouble quickly. But if they're healthy, it might not matter.
So I think where I would place them in terms of regular season performance, I think they're pretty comfortably a pretty safe team. Like in terms of teams who might finish in the top 3 in the East, outside of the injury, which a lot of teams at the top have injury concerns, especially the team we'll probably get to next. Outside of that, I think they have a really good chance of being a top 3 team in a regular season in the Eastern Conference. Could they finish ahead of the Sixers? I think it would probably take a pretty substantial injury to Joel Embiid, but Joel Embiid has had pretty substantial injuries throughout his career. Where I wonder is, do they have this, outside of Boston and the Sixers, do they have the most championship equity of the teams left? And I do wonder a little bit about Julius Randle's fit. I'm not sure it's really going to matter because quite frankly, I think there's a pretty good chance he's going to be traded between now and the playoffs.
But there's still, if we focus on the regular season and how we get there and how the seeding shakes out, I do think the Randle factor is significant.
A factor for sure, but he's been awful in his 2 playoff runs. Yes. Like truly, truly awful. And he comes out there and he's like, I want the ball. I want my shots. I want to create for the team. And he has another clunker of a playoff run that could really impact them. And I, like you mentioned, Brunson against the right matchup might have a game or two where he struggles. And against a good team that take advantage of that could, it's one thing to beat the Sixers when Embiid's at 50%. It's another thing to beat 4 teams throughout a playoff run if someone like that might struggle against certain matchups. But really, it's also just like I think they're lacking a number 2 a little bit. And when you add all of those factors in, I think they're a really good team. I think if they're healthy, they could win mid-50s games or low to mid-50s at the very least. But I do wonder if other teams, and probably specifically the Bucks, and I think we're going to fade the Bucks here in a minute, and I would say they have a lower probability of being a championship caliber team. But I think if everything goes right, they might have more championship equity. But it would take a number of things to go perfectly right for them.
Yeah, and Winona says Randle is not going to mix well with that. We kind of agree. That was the one thing when we looked at it when the trade went down with Kale and then bringing back Anunoby. All right, where's he going to go? How's he going to fit? And that completely changed as the course of the offseason continued to go on, especially when Hartenstein went to Oklahoma City. That changed. So the discussion now is, well, I think all of us are curious to see how that plays out. Brunson is going to be a starter. Kale's going to be a starter. Anunoby. So is Randle, and the same for Mitchell Robinson. So Hart, McBride, DiVincenzo, those are your first 3 to come off the bench, and you mix in Achua or Jericho Sims if they go a little bit deeper in the bench there. Other than that, look, they have the depth. But now the big question is Julius Randle as that number 2 that Derek brings up. Can he stay healthy? How much is he going to fit there? As far as Jalen Brunson has cemented himself as the guy in New York now. He's already been named the captain. All that great buzz that was there for Julius Randle 2 years ago when he first made his All-Star team and New York was buzzing about him. That's gone because that's
Brunson's
now
the mayor
all,
now.
Exactly. He is the mayor, and that is him. That's all him. So is Julius Randle going to be okay with that? Because that was one of the big things when he was getting all that praise for his first All-Star appearance. The whispers were he still felt like he wasn't being respected enough. Well, guess what? Now that's really gone. And then you bring in Anunoby, you bring Kale in, and they make that run without you. People think you're expendable. So is he going to overdo it and trying to force himself? That's his game anyway.
He also wants to use some of those floor spots that Brunson is very good from, right?
Yes.
And so obviously he's had good runs as a shooter, but he still wants to get to that mid-post area and do Julius Randle things from those spots. And so, how does that clash? And then how do the other guys fit around it? Like Mikal is an easy guy to, he'll slide in wherever he needs to get to. But now also, this is not criticism of your cousin, but now that your cousin has been a first option somewhere, right, and succeeded at a pretty high level being that way, he wants to get the ball. I'm sure.
And guess what? He likes to get to his spot.
All these guys are good players.
Kale likes to get to his spot in the mid post. Pull up jumper, free throw extended. He gets to that fadeaway every time. That's what he works on. That's what he does. And as a number 1, he really got a chance to show that with the Brooklyn Nets. He's still going to want to be able to take some of those shots within the flow of the offense.
And so as all these guys are going to have to figure out, where am I in this ecosystem? How can I get to my stuff? And Tibbs, for his strengths as a defensive guy, he's always been an elite defensive guy. Has not necessarily been renowned for how he sets up his offenses, right? Like it was a lot of just, hey, Jalen, go do stuff last year, right? And so let's see how that plays out. And if we bring it back to the Sixers perspective, I think the big positive, if you're the Sixers and you're looking at the Knicks as, hey, we might have to see them in round 2. We might have to beat them out for a 2 seed, for example.
Yep.
You've already seen in a playoff setting, Joel compromised with a better front court for the Knicks, average 33 a game, drop 50 on them, and still have a pretty good series. You've seen Tyrese Maxey go into the Garden in a winner-go-home scenario and put on an absolute masterpiece. So unlike the Celtics, there is not that history of, oh, man, we always lose to the Knicks. Oh, man, I'm really scared of going to Madison Square Garden. So that part, I think the Sixers would feel much better about. It's not to say they're absolutely going to outlast the Knicks or beat the Knicks this season if they meet them in the playoffs. But I do think they would feel much better going into that series than if you end up like the 4 seed, for example, and you got to play Boston in round 2.
Yeah.
That is a way bigger hurdle to clear than playing the Knicks as it stands right now.
Would definitely prefer to play them in that second round. Definitely. And I think most people would feel good going into that series of whether they feel like it's a a 60-40 chance, or even if it's a 53-47, and you're just looking at it saying, I think we have a chance to beat this basketball team. You know it's going to be a competitive series either way. Seeing them in round 2 is much better than seeing the Boston Celtics in round number 2.
We all silly like the mayor.